Morning. Welcome to Silverside Online for Sunday, August the 23rd. I'm glad you are with us. Always grateful for your participation and your presence whenever you're watching. Last week, we seemed to have a bumper crop of people listening in right at 10 o'clock. So we had this virtual communal experience going on. Many others of you will be hearing this at different times as you listen to it later in the week or later on Sunday. But anyway, we're glad to have you as a part of our listening audience whenever it's possible for you to tune in. We will continue these Sunday morning online gatherings until Sunday, September the 13th, which is the church's 185th birthday. And then we will be meeting face to face, starting at 10 o'clock, our usual time. We have special service planned that day. We also have a special online presentation that we will be sharing on September the 5th, the actual birth date of Silverside Church. On the 13th, some additional special treats, musically speaking, starting on Sunday afternoon, September the 13th, and then continuing on September the 20th and the 27th. Some afternoon concerts. On the 13th, it will be a string ensemble featuring Spanish and classical music. On the 20th, some traditional Dixieland music. And on the 27th, rock and roll, reunion band featuring our own members, Bill Englehart and Sam Michael. So this will be an outstanding opportunity as the weather is comfortable on the lawn of Silverside Church for you to come and sit either in a lawn chair or in your car. We'll be properly distanced, and we want you to wear masks still. But this will be an opportunity to hear some great music and see our folks. Church at 10 on the 13th to celebrate 185 years of being a church. Wow. And then that afternoon, and we'll have more details about time and so forth very soon.
Our first reading is from Ashley Hodgson. Strength and courage aren't always measured in medals and victories. They are measured in the struggles people overcome. The strongest people aren't always the ones who win, but those who don't give up when they lose.
Day. I want to start by remembering a college professor of mine who by a strange turn of sabbatical scheduling, ended up also being a seminary professor of mine. Dr. Paul Brewer, great professor, also was the only interim pastor that my church ever had while I was growing up. We used to say we had pastors between Dr. Brewer's interims. He was a philosopher, also a theologian, but primarily a philosopher. And he taught courses at Carson College, primarily in philosophy, but a few theology courses scattered in. He was the most brilliant person I think I've ever known. No offense to all these DuPont folks that I now know. Dr. Brewer taught me a great deal about ethics from both a theological and a philosophical point of view. And one of the things that he taught me, as I think the first time I studied with him I was 19, although I'd already heard him preach many times across my lifetime. He preached brief sermons, and he preached very progressive sermons, which was a stunning thing to me, that they were so well accepted by most of the people at Beaver Dam Baptist Church in Halls Crossroads, who weren't your progressive types, but people by and large loved Dr. Brewer and listened carefully to what he had to say. So from Dr. Brewer, Paul D. Brewer, now the late Paul Brewer, in the world of ethics, and ethics pertains to our lives and how we live and how we survive, of course. we of course look to win the big battle or the big battles. Yes, of course we focus on that, but along the way to that or to those, what we hope for more frequently and what we more likely are going to see more frequently are battles won. Win a small battle here, win a small battle there. There's a collective benefit to lots of people winning small battles, and many of the large battles may not be won by a lot of people who, the wars may not be won by a lot of people who spend their time investing in winning the small battles toward the greater goal. But it's progress. It's part of the process. And in the reading that you heard from our liturgist for today, Kent Frederick, our newest member at Silverside, there's some encouragement about that. We don't always win, and in fact, concentrating on where we stand with reference to winning all the time isn't necessarily the best place to focus our time and energy. There are better places to focus our energies. Strength and courage, Ashley Hodgkinson said, aren't always measured in medals and victories, but in the struggles people overcome. Yeah, we we do that a bit at a time. And I've talked often in the past about having to learn to be satisfied with baby steps. That's what I'm talking about to an extent again today. We can't go out expecting to win the big wars, the moral and ethical wars. And if we don't win those big moral and ethical wars finally and once and for all, we just throw up our hands and say, well, let evil have its way. We don't have a shot in the first place. So just let it go. No, please, let's not give in to that. Jesus, who is our example, did not give in to that and easily could have given in to that. He didn't. He kept winning people to God's love one at a time, frequently. Yeah. So, as we gain our momentum today, let us say, and as we hone our focus for today, let us keep in mind that in any given week, we hopefully can use the spiritual energy we gain from being together and thinking together to win a small battle that contributes toward defeating some huge enemy in a big war. And I'm not talking about any kind of physical violence at all. And I think you know that, but just in case there's some visitors who don't know that, I'm a pacifistic person. I'm not talking about any kind of physical violence or attacks on the lives of people. We are in a state, many of us are feeling defeated right now. And that the coronavirus and or people who are making decisions about treatment possibilities are the Keystone Cops. Move a step ahead, lose 10 steps backwards. And then so many other things that have, political connections that seem to be working against the well-being of good people, of most people. How are we able to stay encouraged? Well, one thing is just this: not to concentrate hour by hour or even day by day on winning the big war or nothing, but winning the small battles one at a time and being content with that. Please join me now in a time for prayer and the sharing of positive thoughts. For some words to guide us in those prayers and positive thoughts today, I am reading a segment from the great hymn by Herr Dr. Martin Luther, that in English we call "A Mighty Fortress is Our God." These words are the second stanza of Luther's enduring hymn. Did we in our own strength confide? Our striving would be losing. Were not the right man on our side, the man of God's own choosing, dost ask who that may be? Christ Jesus, it is he. Lord Sabaoth his name. From age to age the same. And he must win the battle. Amen.
Our second reading is from 2 Corinthians chapter 4, 8 through 10. We are pressed on every side by troubles, but not crushed or broken. We are perplexed because we don't know why things happen as they do, but we don't give up and quit. We are hunted down, but God never abandons us. We get knocked down, but we get up again and keep going. These bodies of ours are constantly facing death, so it is clear to all that it is only the living Christ within us who keeps us safe.
For our encouragement and inspiration today, I want to take two verses from what Kent has read for us. 2 Corinthians 4, verses 8 and 9. I want to take just those two verses and four phrases out of those two verses. They're juxtaposing ideas, actually 8 phrases, 2 sets of juxtapositions. And there's a message here about people who feel defeated. What's the sign that we are defeated? Paul said, people who are in God's hand are never defeated in this world, even if they are overtaken by an unjust death. Think about that. Think about all the signs we have that we need proof that we are cared for by God.
Our last reading is from Albert Camus. In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer.
So very much aware of how people feel who are being tromped on by life. Paul is being very pastoral here. He's very very much with the people in their feelings, but he's not leaving them in their sadnesses and their lonelinesses and such. By the way, Kent's favorite version of this passage is from the Living Bible, and the one that has most recently caught my attention is called the Aramaic translation in plain English, and being the magnanimous person I am, I have included both here. So let's see about this first juxtaposition. Paul is talking about, on the one side, how life feels when it's at its worst. Pressed on every side, but not crushed or broken. That's the resolution, of course. Or, as the Aramaic folks translated it, squeezed, but not strangled. So we know what it is to feel pressed on every side. Life seems to be closing in on us in every direction, squeezed in by life until it feels like we can't breathe anymore. One more discouragement, one more mishap, one more tragedy, one more confusion, and we feel like we can't take anymore. We should just give up and fall into whatever happens. Life may do its damnedest to knock the wind out of us, to squeeze the hope out of us, to crush our spirits, to give us nothing left to live with or live for. But Paul said, no. Leaning into God, life will do what it will. And it will do some horrible things to many, many people. It will. But leaning into God, we are not crushed. We are not squeezed beyond our ability to keep looking to a better day. Next challenge that Paul deals with here. We're perplexed, but we don't give up in our confusion. I probably, no offense, Kent, will rarely vote in favor of a Living Bible rendering over a translation, a direct translation, which the Living Bible is a paraphrase, not a translation. But anyway, I do not know where the translators of the Aramaic and plain English got this. I think the Living Bible got it. Being people who favor reason and rationalism, we take great comfort, I suppose is the right word, in being able to understand issues and circumstances and processes. We don't like to be perplexed. We don't like to be confused, and we're willing to do the work to dig in and find out what the facts are, whether it is a mathematical problem of some sort, or a social problem of some sort, or a relationship problem of some sort, maybe even a theological problem of some sort. We want to dig in and find out what exactly is going on. What is going on? Why are in a pandemic situation, why are so many people dying? Why has the race to come up with a vaccination become now politicized? Oh, well, we have that answer already. Sometimes in a state of confusion, people, even smart people like you, have a way of just giving up, giving up. Nope. Paul says that can't happen, that won't work, that won't help. Doesn't help you, doesn't help other people. Doesn't reflect the spiritual strength available to you if you will lean into God. God isn't magic. God doesn't take the pain away. God doesn't force our brains to be able to take in information that we're not yet ready to absorb for what reason or another. We're not generally mind readers. I saw recently where there's yet another agency that has been appointed by the United States government to study UFOs. Maybe that will explain everything. Maybe all the nonsense that's going on now with reference to illness and conflict between nations who have no business being at conflict with each other. Maybe the aliens, maybe it's their fault. But in any case, confusion is not the basis for giving up or being discouraged and just giving in. There are those who are persecuted for their faith. There are those who are persecuted for their commitment to goodness, even if they're not people of faith. There are those who are persecuted for simply taking stands that their civil freedoms supposedly allow them to. I did not bother to read, did not want to read the details of a story the other day about a man in Florida who went over to his neighbor's house and punched him in the face because his neighbor had a Biden sign, pro-Biden sign, in his yard. Not in the man's yard who did the punching, but in his own yard. We're living in a time right now in the modern United States, I'd say the modern Western world, where evil groups feel extremely empowered to persecute anybody who doesn't agree with them through any means. Lies, violence as well. And so those of us who may have never felt persecuted a day in our lives may certainly be living in a time right now where we are being persecuted, or we could be persecuted. And not by the people that we may ever have imagined. I think plenty of people don't like the picture of God I paint. I don't necessarily like it myself, but it's the way I think it is. I don't think God gets in human conflict. I think God leaves it to us to sort that out. Don't think God takes sides in war, because God loves people on both sides, even though clearly there's the difference between right and wrong. So we may be persecuted, and we may think God should get the other person off our backs or even strike down the other person, but that isn't how God works. Nonetheless, we aren't forsaken or abandoned by God. The fact that we're being persecuted is not a sign that God has lost interest in us or that God's love for us has in any way been diminished. Finally, most of us know what it feels like to feel that life is literally knocked us down. And sometimes we don't know if we can get up again. Sometimes we don't know if we want to get up again. Sometimes it feels like it would be just so much easier. Just, as I said earlier, just to passively let the blows of life or the dangerous winds of life do what they will to us. We feel so helpless often to control our own destinies, much less to have any positive impact on the destinies of others. We can, but not as much as we would want. And sometimes it feels like not enough to make the efforts worthwhile. Being knocked down does not mean defeated. Being knocked out does not mean a sure win for the evil forces that knock us out. We may have to struggle to get back on our feet. We may not be able to get back on our feet by ourselves. Someone else may win the match. We may have to recuperate before we're back on our feet. But most of us, most of the time, will be back on our feet, struggling once again against the evil and injustice in this world. As most of us understand our faith to be just that. Following the example of Jesus is our faith. There is no creed. There is no theologizing. Being a person of faith is fighting evil and injustice and living our best the way Jesus lived. And that's the challenge, even in these horrible days of pandemic, finding ways to help those who are suffering, finding ways to support a cure. That is a faith obligation.